Hello, it's Matthew here from the Nations of Sanity project, a project that's based on the assertion that crime, and therefore also law, can and should be defined by the concept of individual self-ownership and established as the terms of a peace agreement. Now, many years ago, I wrote an article about a hypothetical super advanced AI that we could ask various questions to, and basically posited that if we asked the question of this AI of how we can create a truly free society with truly equal rights, the only answer that it would or possibly could give to that question is essentially the answer that the Nations of Sanity project presents, which is to establish the non-aggression principle, the principle of individual self-ownership, to establish that principle as the law through a peace agreement. And this is kind of based on a logical, an undeniable logical journey. Because if you think about it, the concept of individual rights is the only coherent foundation for the concept of rights overall. So if there is such a thing as rights, upon which we can obviously define crime and law, where our rights and our freedom ends and begins. If we have such a concept, then it can only coherently exist based on individual self-ownership. Therefore, the non-aggression principle would be the only standard of law that we could justifiably enforce with force against people. Because essentially it would just be defensive force or responsive force that is protecting individual rights, as opposed to other laws that exist today that are in violation of individual rights. Again, this is logically undeniable. And then the final step in this logical journey, once we understand the concept of individual rights being the only coherent way we can have rights, when you understand that the non-aggression principle is the only standard of law that we could justifiably enforce on people with force, the final sort of piece in this journey is to understand that the only way that we could establish this law, this principle, the non-aggression principle, as the law, would be to establish it as the terms of a peace agreement. Because the other ways in which laws are established, i.e. through ruling authorities like ruling governments, you couldn't establish the non-aggression principle as law this way, because you would be contradicting the very law that you're establishing, because obviously ruling authorities would be illegal under this law. So we would abolish all ruling governments, have to replace all collectives with non-coercive voluntary versions of themselves, and our society would essentially be a free society. Now, as I say, this is all logically undeniable. I posited many years ago in my article that a hypothetical advanced thinking AI would agree with the assertions of the Nations of Sanity project. I've recently had the opportunity to test this to some extent by asking Grok about the Nations of Sanity project, and Grok agrees. So if you have any doubts, please ask Grok about the Nations of Sanity project, and I'm sure you'll get a very strong endorsement from this particular AI. But the point of it, whether it's Grok, any other kind of AI, or whether it's your own thinking brain, the point of this is there is an undeniable logic here with regards to how we can create a truly free society where people have truly equal rights. Because the only rights we can have in truly equal measure is the right over ourselves as individuals. And everything else with regards to property rights, law, rights, freedom, crime, all of those concepts become objectively identifiable from that foundation. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you have any questions about what I presented or the Nations of Sanity project in general, please visit thenationsofsanity.com, which is our website, or the Nations of Sanity YouTube channel, and please scrutinize or support this project.